Here.
All right, I'm gonna call us to order. Time is currently 5:02. All right, so the first thing is we have the approval of our draft meeting minutes from our October 21st meeting, last meeting. Yeah, right? Isn't that the one?
Yes. 23rd? No,
No,
that's today. It's September 25th is when,
Oh,
that's when
Yes,
it's.
September 25th. Oh, sorry, I'm looking, I picked up the wrong document. Yeah, so our October 9th meeting minutes. We didn't have a meeting, right, because I canceled it.
Right.
We don't need to do that.
So September 25th, we need to.
September 25th. Can I have a motion to approve? that?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor? All right, we gotta do a voice vote. Do you have anyone on?
Ami was,
I don't see her now.
I just gave her access and then she disappeared.
Okay.
That happens.
I'm just gonna do like a voice vote really quick. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No, abstentions. We'll just say that she abstained. for now.
Just say she wasn't available.
Oh, yeah, she wasn't available. Yeah. All right, so yeah, we have to approve the minutes so that they can go on the county. site. So we've done that. All right, report from so the first thing we have. Also for anyone who didn't know, we were supposed to meet 2 weeks ago and I canceled the meeting because we didn't have any Republicans because there was a conference going on and I just felt like better to have bipartisanship, particularly right before the election. So I canceled that meeting. So I'm sorry for anyone that was confused by that. Wanted to say that. Stacy, do you want to give a report from the October 3rd election board meeting?
Oh, yes, I forgot. I forgot I won't. It was a very interesting meeting. I had never been to one before, so that was an exciting experience. And so I just gave a very brief update of where we are, that we're working on a document. We're working towards a document. We have 4 options that we are considering. They asked what they were. I gave a very brief summary of what those options were, that we would vote on those. And we would like to bring them to the committee, to the election board for their give us a clue that we're on the right track before we go and do all the rest of the business. So they were happy to do that. They would like to do as much as possible before the end of the year.
Okay.
And so that is I think they'd like the entire plan by the end of the year. I'm not sure if that's realistic or not, or if it would have to wait till January. It's just there's a lot of stuff we just have to really make sure we've got all because it's a document that goes to the state. It's a legal document, so it's a big deal. And I haven't really gone through it in great detail. And I think it'd be good for several of us to go through it in great detail to understand exactly all that we need to do. I think we have a broad outline. I think we can get the broad outline together by the end of the year, but whether it has all the I's dotted and T's crossed, I'm not convinced, but I think we could do it sometime very shortly thereafter. Just because December is a disaster and, and November we're going to have one meeting in November because of Thanksgiving and, so yeah. But
We
I
need
think,
to have Molly, or I assume Molly would be the attorney that would be looking over this document, right? Have her look over it before we finalize it. I mean,
oh my goodness, yes. I think that's a splendid thought.
yes. Because it's gonna have to be put in some legal speak, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah, I think those are all good reasons for being, I know that they are anticipating our document but yeah, that's just. I think the draft is possible.
I think a draft is possible in November for them to go.
Because we already have the very good outline.
We have a good outline, we have a good start. I put together a lot of tables because for me, data, I can't even think about it without data. I can't even think about how to think about this. So that was a fair amount of effort to put those tables together. and then to get them from Excel and, all that stupid.
And I'm happy to
Formatting
take the
stuff.
next pass at it
Okay.
and like look through it and flesh things out and add.
Well, I'll add some text about what those tables are and why they're important and sort of the
Great.
history of where we are. We need a little more data though. So I've kind of veered off of the,
Oh, yeah, so I think we've done the election report, so I also wanted to, oh, yeah, so we can come back. Do you want to come back? Do you want to come back to it? Okay, because I know that I jumped us forward.
oh, and we have a guest with us to present. We don't want to keep them waiting.
Yes, yeah, John, right, is on there. So, yeah, so I think we will move on to the discussion of the GIS map of voting by precinct. John, thank you so much for meeting with us. It's really great to have you.
Yeah, no problem. Yes, I'm John Baton. I'm the GIS coordinator for Monroe County. Just a background on me. I've got a PhD in industrial heritage and archaeology. I've been doing GIS stuff in terms of like social data for probably about 15, 16 years or something like that. A lot of what I do is try to incorporate I guess qualitative data into GIS applications to understand kind of spatial relationships among people and then also among people in the environment. But what I was able to do is come up with a dashboard for you guys, and everybody here has seen that information as well, correct? Like gotten the links and stuff like that.
Have you gotten to see it yet?
And I'll share my screen too. I'm
Yeah, if
guessing
you want to
that.
just walk us through it really quick, that would be
For
really.
sure.
Kylie, it's the same one you said we're not getting date. Oh, a different one?
It's a different one, yes.
Okay.
So you guys can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
It's a little
So
small, but we'll work on
yeah, this is as large as I can get it here. So if
it.
you
No, we
guys,
can
and
make it bigger on
I-
our side.
okay. And I was gonna say I can send the link again as well. I'll just kind of go over what's going on here. So this is called a splash screen. These are important to have for any type of social data or any type of data in that matter that you're going to be allowing people to analyze what's going on. So this is the splash screen kind of explaining what's going on, as well as some caveats to the data. One of them is that this was entered by me by hand, right? So there's the potential that I had some fat thumbs. I highly, highly doubt it, but I'm just putting it there as kind of a disclaimer that, hey, maybe there could be a number that's wrong here. I'm guessing it's not, but that's kind of the process. I also have a second kind of note here that there was some precincting that went on. And so the data that I'm drawing on here for the maps are going to be the precincts that we have currently. And so in terms of if one of those things, were drawn a little bit differently from 2016 to 2024, that could be, something to consider. But I'm just going to say, I understand the complexity of this dashboard and go forward. So on the left, you have a map that's showing 2016 data, polling locations and precincts. And then on the right, you have a map showing polling locations and precincts. These are what are called choropleth maps. And what that does is use graduated colors or graduated shapes. So larger shapes, darker colors to represent more kind of quantities in terms of what's going on. And so the circles here are showing locations of polling sites. And then those squares or the polygons are showing precincts. These two maps are attached to one another, or the spatial extent is attached. So as we click on a polling location, and that's what we have here in this tab, or this tabular data on the left here is polling stations for 2016. And on the right, we also have polling stations for 2020. So I'm just going to click on Sherwood Oaks Christian Church because I know that was a polling site for both years. I'll click on this, and what it's going to do, oh, sorry, I'm using a laptop as well, and I don't have a mouse, and so I right-clicked there by accident. So, okay, we will click on Sherwood Oaks, and it's going to zoom into the Sherwood Oaks Christian Church. And what you're going to do is get some information. You can see that what it's showing here on the bottom right, this little indicator is showing the total votes cast at the current map extent in 2016, as well as the total votes cast at that polling site. These are generally going to be roughly the same, but sometimes you might get some discrepancies there. So you can see at Sherwood Oaks Christian Church in 2016, we had 2427 votes coming from 3 different precincts. And then in 2020, if we click on the same data set, well, I guess not same data set, same polling location, we'll see that during the 2020 general, we had 2,688 votes cast from the same 3 precincts. We can click out of this and it'll go back to the main kind of view of the map. And you can essentially search by precinct as well. So I'll search by, let's go down to Perry 13, which is, in my opinion, the best precinct in all of Bloomington, solely because I live there. And so you can see Perry 13 here had, and now this is coming off of 2016 data. Perry 13, we had, this is just getting into kind of that voter registration information, if you guys are interested in that as well, and turnout. So we had 58.1 in 2016, and then in 2020, we had a turnout that was a little bit higher, 69%. So we have kind of two different data sets going on here, but we have polling sites and precincts, and both of these are going to be showing you the total votes cast at those locations.
Okay, question for you there.
Yeah,
Is
for
that the
sure.
total amount cast on election day or by election day? So does that include the people? So if you voted, for example, early voting, would you show up as part of that turnout data in that number? Like, is it the total amount by election day, or is it the total amount who voted on election day?
I believe these are all on election day. Let me hit refresh here, and I have the data that I was utilizing. As I mentioned, a lot of this information was hand typed because the data source. So when you're,
yes.
when you're,
We know, we're good.
you guys are aware of it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
so let me just show you guys this here. So here's 2016 data, and then I'm gonna pull up 2020 data as well. The 2020 data is better, but the 2016 data is pretty gross, for a lack of better. I believe this is 2016. We'll see what. Sorry, and again, I'm on my laptop for work that I don't utilize that often. We'll see if this actually shows up here. I don't know why. It's like downloading these. Okay, so this is 2020 information. And again, this would be at precinct results going off of, let's just see here, Bloomington 1. Oh,
Yeah, because we were looking at Perry 13, weren't we? Or Perry 13?
Correct. Yeah, and we can look at Bloomington 1 if we wanted to. Again, it's one of those
Okay, so
challenges.
you're pulling from this the total amount. So that's both election day and early, okay.
So this is
Bloomington. One's election day.
Yeah, let's check it out. So this is Bloomington 1. Straight party. And it looks like 234 is what we have going on there. So let's just see what happens here. Sorry, then TeamSing is blocking. I'm used to having like multiple screens. I don't have that right now. 234. So yeah, so here we have ballots cast for Bloomington 1 was 234. So it was both for 2020. Now for 2016, if I can find that, the 2016 data, I think you guys are familiar with. It's not good. Well, I shouldn't say it's not good. It's just it's complex. It's a challenge to work with. Sorry here. This is what I was working with for 2016.
I know.
And so for this, I was doing number of ballots. I'm assuming that this is going to be, it says total voters on the top. So I'm guessing that this is including both. Again, you know, if it was early voting, that polling site would be showing up as, I guess for 2016, it would have been election, basically the voter reg building. For 2020, I think it was election central then, if I'm remembering right, for early voting.
It was,
So-
yeah.
So again, this is like the data that I had to work with and trying to kind of come up with something that's intelligible for the general public, and then also something that you guys can utilize. I'll also note that the data for both 2016 and 2020 are classified. And what I do is I classify data using what's called natural breaks. And so this means that these graduated symbols are going to be showing a same size, but the values might be different. But those values are going to be grouped based on kind of the way that these numbers are distributed naturally across the spectrum. And I do this because this is a way to eliminate any type of bias or kind of subjective, doings on my part. So that's what's going on here too.
So just to confirm again, so it looks like we think both of them are by election day. So by the end of election day, that's what happens, both early voting and, okay, all right, thank you.
Correct. And that's, to the best of my knowledge, that's what I think we got going on.
Okay, cool. All right, sorry, I interrupted you. Did you want to keep showing us anything?
No, I mean, I can basically you're going to get different data that's going to tabulate. I said that the current map extent is going to show the total votes cast. And so as we zoom in on a map, you can see kind of these things are going to change for each of the maps. It's just kind of a cool way to display data. That's basically it. You guys, I'm guessing, have looked at this. I can answer any questions you have about it or functionality and things of that nature as well.
Yeah, and I just want to confirm that it's really cool.
Thank you.
I really like it. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's really neat.
And thanks for doing all the data entry, because I was able to scrape the data and use it for tables for our document. So it was super helpful. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'll just say that like anytime anybody in audience here, anybody that's watching on CATS in the future has a data analysis question, has a data visualization question, anything like that, I make myself available all the time. My goal in my position is to produce data transparency to everybody in Monroe County, and also just to do what I consider to be cool things. And so that's kind of a goal of myself and the GIS division.
I think there might be a point in time where we want to get some fixed maps to go in a document showing distance from, I don't know quite what, I have a picture in my head, but I can't quite articulate it yet. But I think that we might want to know some distances for locations of, of distance between polling areas and things, and that would be helpful.
Sure.
Perfect. So we'll be in contact in a while, though.
One question I have is, it looks like, I want to say that's Clear Creek Township in the
Yeah.
bottom quarter. There's no data for 2020.
Are you talking about right here?
No, the complete other side of the county.
Oh, sorry, southwest.
Yeah.
Let's
20
see here.
Yeah. You see, 2016 has something, there's a pretty,
Oh, that's a polling site. Are you talking about the little orange?
So-
Orange, yeah.
Yeah, that means there wasn't a polling site there.
Well, there is.
but there was.
Oh, but there is, yeah, there is. You just have to really zoom in.
Okay, I couldn't
It's
see.
very small.
Are we
right?
talking
I
about
see it
down
now.
here in Indian Creek?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, there's like a real difference, it looks like, in turnout.
And there is one township that does not have a polling place that polls with Bloomington. And I noted it.
But probably Salt Creek.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
But why is that, what you pointed out, why is that so different?
Yeah, that,
Well, it's small because it's the number of people who vote there.
At a precinct, so.
I don't know if that's,
That much? Is what we're
yeah, I don't,
observing?
yeah.
Well, yeah, do you want to tell us about the orange circles and what they mean?
Yeah,
That's a tremendous drop off, and I think that's something,
But so the number of people, correct me if I'm wrong, John, the blue represents the number of people who voted in that precinct, like the percent number of people. And the orange is just that polling site.
correct.
So
That's
yeah,
correct.
it's all.
So here, let's,
early
that was,
voting.
Yeah,
that was
No,
the
it's
Indian,
2020.
But this includes early voting, correct? So it's mail or something?
The precinct site would be what got the votes then though, right? Because it was early voting.
it would be the light blue.
That must
See,
be that-
we changed the voting locations. In 2016, that was at the fire station. And in 2020, I think it switched to Lions Club.
Yeah.
I worry that, and see, the votes are more.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
oh, what is going on with this one? 871. So this is at the very tail end of how this data fell in to this classification scheme. You can see 871 here in that legend. And then this one be 739. I'm guessing this is going to be at,
Oh,
Right, so,
Oh,
well, there,
That
I
was
mean,
the thing.
okay. well,
so
that
they're
now makes
apples
sense.
and apples, basically, but because of turnout changes.
But it looks like though, they're still within the same range for the circle size.
they sure do. And so I can
Huh.
look into this. Was that William Ellis?
Yes,
I can look into this and get back to you on that. I'm trying to zoom
you.
out here, and my issue with not having a mouse, I have to use the zoom on my
I understand that.
Yeah.
on the
Right.
mouse pad, and I'm it's getting kind of a little bit wonky here. But no, that's
So-
a great point.
the data looks good, though. So
So
the
the data,
underlying
yeah,
data,
the data's good. I mean, I'm glad we got through it, because I wouldn't have known right offhand. The overall, what concerns me just from what was flashed, did moving polling places cause a sharp drop in voters?
Right.
For sure.
But it,
I mean, it didn't,
right,
so-
that's what I worried, just,
Is there a way to have the circles, the ranges for the circles be the same between 2016 and 2020? So that when we look at the circles between the two, we are comparing them one to one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, the circles don't need to be, they can just all be the same size. Is that something you guys would want?
No, I
No,
think
no.
I just want them to be a similar.
The scale, we just need the scale the same.
Yes, there's
That's-
only like, we're only utilizing what, like 3 sizes of circles or as part of this or something?
Yeah, so essentially, if the.
It makes a big difference.
If the large circle could be 3,000 to 4,000 for both of them.
in the range, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
instead of
each year.
different.
This is the issue here too. Sorry, it took me a second to understand what's going on. I'll answer your,
Absolutely,
I'll answer your question in 1 second too. So here's the Indian Creek Fire Station. All right, so this one here has come on, I clicked on you. Okay, had 739 votes. So we look at the legend here. 739 falls into this kind of larger gradient.
Right.
Now, what I wasn't paying attention to here before, Indian Creek Fire, or this is now same polling station.
The
It's
lines.
okay, yeah, 871, different location, 871. Now the issue here, which kind of sucks, is that 871 is on the tail end of this very little tiny dot. So if it was 872, if it was one more voter there, so we got to get more votes
Okay.
coming out of the Indian Creek precinct, the circles would have been the same. So
So in reality, it's not as big of a jump or
Not at
big of
all.
a difference.
Correct. So
Yeah.
the visualization
Yeah.
is being misleading.
I think for our purposes, I don't know if we want to have them spend much more time on that, do we? I mean, just from the circles, if it's a hard fix.
Yeah, I think that if it's useful to, if we're hoping to use these visualizations to show what has shifted, then I do think that it's probably important for us to be able to compare them one to one. But if we're not gonna be using this specific
Right.
metric, then maybe not.
I guess it also comes back to Stacy and I'm sorry, everyone, I was late. I was listening in on the phone while I was walking over here. But so I heard the earlier part. Is what you're doing, would it correct for what we're talking about, or your point, Danielle, do we need to?
I think at some point we
For
need a
this to be
fixed
correct.
map to go in a document as opposed to the dynamic, which is really helpful. It's super helpful. So please, thank you so much for doing it. But I think for our document, we're going to need a fixed map. And then we'll have to figure out exactly what that is. And I think all of this data is perfect and we can just fuss a little bit with it when we need to, when we know exactly what we want.
So for this, it's probably not worth it to do a fix for it.
I
And
don't
then
think so.
if we're looking at that specific type of comparison and wanting to have that visualization, that's when we have that conversation about.
I think so.
Yeah, but in the context of our work in general, John, I mean, one of the things we are talking about doing is not completely taking all the individual precinct locations, but eliminating several locations as part of moving to vote centers. And so this is, I think, something that I'm assuming would be helpful to us in making that decision of.
And that's why I flagged, because that was a change. And the same with the one in Ellettsville.
Yes.
We used to have that location changed too. So, I mean, I understand now, but I mean, just first glance, I was like, okay, did moving it cause a drop in?
Yeah, this is to say that it's still useful in our decision.
Yes, absolutely.
In that, like, yeah, I also have Indian Creek on my list of like, oh, maybe what's going on there, because it is something visually you can see a difference.
Yeah, I teach a class that is called damn lies, statistics and visualization. And how you, yeah, so I'll just say that it's very.
My class.
Let's get
there's a classic bit of literature in geography, and it's called Lying with Maps.
Yes.
And I did some other mapping of election data from the 2024 primary. And there's this bright, and I did it by a ratio of Republican to Democrat votes. And it's very typical. What you'd see is lots of Democrat votes in the kind of areas around Bloomington, and then it gets more red as you move out to the kind of rural parts of the county. However, there's one red, kind of blatantly red island in Bloomington, and it's right on IU's campus. And it's, I think, the Bloomington 1 precinct is what it is. And the reason for that is because out of the like 1,200 people that could have voted it for the 2024 primary, out of that precinct, 3 people voted, and 2 of them voted for Nikki Haley. And so And so it's this like, well, that's clearly not accurate,
Yeah.
you know, like, but the map shows it that way, you know? And so the thing that we could do with this, with the circles, is we could easily massage this data to make it more representative of what's actually happening. The issue with that is you're starting to kind of mess with, I don't want to say you're messing with statistics, but you're bringing human elements into it. So it's just
Right.
something to consider.
Yeah, I guess like another thing that would be helpful to us in decision making, at least for me, I can say, is seeing if there are any demographic differences by precinct in how people, whether people choose to early vote or choose to vote on election day.
Sure.
I don't know if that would change that much of what we're talking about, but I mean, just to say, like, are there demographic differences? Not demographic, but like geographic, thank you. Geographic differences
Okay.
in decisions that are being made. I don't know if we can get that sort of information, but maybe there's some, I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there, that might affect. I'm kind of looking around the room, would that affect the way that we put locations if we knew that voters in certain areas of the county were more likely to vote on election day than other areas? Like, as we walked in, we were talking about how apparently a lot of people in Ellettsville do choose to early vote because they often work elsewhere than Ellettsville. And so they often choose to vote early. Not to say we wouldn't do a location in Ellettsville on election day, but if there were other factors that would affect us, yes or no? I don't know. You're doing a bunch of searching and I'm fascinated. I want to know where we're going.
Well, you mentioned demographic, and I'm not sure if this is exactly, and then I think it changed, but will note that we do have 2020 demographic data. We have a viewer that I've
Sweet.
created for this. And so you can basically type in an address here. I'm just going to pick on myself, and it should populate there. So that's going to zoom in on my.
Yeah, I think I really meant geographic, but that's also useful. I mean, we could
And
look
so-
at different.
Yeah, this is giving you information about your census blocks. And then we also have, this is part of our website. So this is a census block then giving you information about census block 1001. Census blocks are smaller geographic areas than census tracts. This is coming from the 2020 census, which was a maligned census for a number of reasons. It being during COVID, and also there being questions that were geared for people not to respond. This is part of the social vulnerability index. This is something also we have on our website. You can search by address in this as well. What the social vulnerability index does is gauges communities' vulnerability to a catastrophe. If you're at a 1, it means you're basically going to die if it rains. If you're at a 0, you're pretty good. But as you get into some of these areas in Bloomington, you can start seeing higher kind of SVIs for these areas. And we have demographic data here too. So for this area. So again, this is
That's really
demographic.
useful. Right.
Sorry.
That's super useful. And that's on the county website?
Yeah, and I can send along all these links after the
Oh,
fact.
yes, please.
Yeah. It's the GIS division. It's award winning. So I'm patting myself on the back here.
Good, yes.
This is so helpful.
Yeah, I think this is super helpful because this will help us a lot to determine, so the more vulnerable people need more opportunity, right? So I think.
Well, yeah, it might help us in assessing,
Yeah,
vulnerability.
no, I think that's marvelous. Yes, thank you, please.
And yeah, any other questions for me or?
What else did you, I heard and was taking in everything you were saying about the checks you have in place to be impartial. So fully respecting that, I also want to ask if there's anything you want to draw our eyes toward since you've been looking so deep. And we want to consider that if there is something we just talked about one example that William raised and we unpacked it some. So similarly, do you, John, have anything you wanted us to look at where you thought something interesting might be going on?
I think something to consider, and this is just, I included in the data set, is looking at, which of these polling stations have more precincts tied to them? And is there logic behind that? Again, I did not spend a ton of time analyzing any of this, but these are some things that I was kind of, looking at was, Bloomington High South, that's my polling station has 5 precincts, That's just one thing. I think, William, you were saying something?
I
Or
took some of
maybe
that, I took that data and I do an average number of, I've done some, very coarse descriptive statistics on that. So it's pretty interesting to how many people, how many precincts per polling place and how many people per polling. So it's really widely, there's a very wide.
Which is a good thing, yeah, to talk about as well, as we don't have
Divergence, there you go.
divergence. We don't have precinct polling, we have super precincts.
Right.
Which are not always totally
Right,
fair
no,
either.
right.
Which is something to consider as part of our work, is we don't have
They
precinct
all
polling.
are, maybe
Yes.
they all are based on this column.
All besides a few. There's a couple that only have one precinct.
Right, there's
Like the games.
a few.
Oh, I
Yeah,
guess you can see everything.
Benton.
yeah,
There's most of them.
Well, Benton
Super
said,
precinct.
Yeah, that has,
it does because it's a super,
right, but I don't know if that would be as, because normally you can have, traditionally before, you could have two precincts in a building, but the super precincts, it's a lot more.
Right.
And the two precincts had to be, both had to be contiguous. I don't know if the super precincts have that same. I don't think all the precincts have.
And we're looking at Kylie, do super precincts have to be contiguous?
No.
No, I didn't think so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so they're
because
not.
one of ours, like election ops is a very strange one. Like there's just really random precincts there. Not really sure how it was selected.
Do you know, Kylie or John, while we have all this up, so maybe it's just a matter of scrolling down a little bit so we can see how many or how few locations have one precinct? Since we're seeing
have
that
it.
several of them have three or more. Okay, so it's just few.
it's in that
And
document.
this is 2016 here and then 2020 over here.
Okay, oh, thank you. And we can't.
Now, like for
Quite see that
24, it's fewer now than what it was. Like
Fewer
there's
ones.
fewer that have just one precinct than
Okay.
what we originally.
Oh, no, it's not.
It's almost because of,
Kind of have
not
those
having built.
We've got, that's what I'm saying.
Or is there any logic that is based off of?
I want to say both 2016 and not 2020. 2016, we had more polling sites than what we have this year.
Yeah.
But 2020, there was fewer poll sites.
Yeah, and that's just a reduction in the number of people that are willing to be full sites.
Correct. Ones that are, yeah, we'll do it again, or ones that are like, no, we're not doing this again.
So something that this data would actually be really helpful for us to determine is if that impacted turnout in specific precincts.
So in 2020, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 polling places had one precinct.
Out of 20, how many?
Out of 20.
29.
Speculating, I'm not saying let's start over from what we're discussed, but do we recall, is there a possibility of a hybrid version, keeping precincts the way they are, but having one location during election day that's a vote center? Like if you kept, this example, I'm just throwing the Napa building open as a vote center, anybody could vote there if they wanted. But then the other precincts, if they go to St. John's and Ellettsville or Burgoon, that would just be for them.
And this was asked during one of our listening sessions. And the general feeling of the room with a lot of nods was all one or the other to eliminate confusion.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think it would be helpful to.
I don't know if it's
Under,
possible.
like, I've been wondering, and I don't know if Molly is on for this, maybe for a different time in the agenda or different meeting, but I am wondering what leeway counties have under the possibility of county ordinances to, if going a vote center model, but build in some safeguards or unique
I
tailoring.
can tell you what the election board has told me. No, that there's anything that the election board, they can't mandate it. State law is superior to anything passed by the county. And state law just says it has to be within 10,000 people or whatever. So I even, again, used the extreme example in Monroe County that every precinct could be on campus. And they said, yeah, that would comply with the law. And there's nothing anybody could do with it.
Well, I am interested in, yes, just delving deeper into that. It can be another time. But it's really helpful to hear the research the information you already got, the reaction you already got to that. But there are hybrid models in other places, but I hear what you all are saying about Indiana and what is our reality of the legal landscape. But in other places, there is a way to communicate it. Is it important to communicate it very carefully and effectively and strongly? Absolutely, so that we don't confuse people, but there are other places that have that sort of hybrid.
All right, do we have any other questions for John? This is really helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Thank
We're
you.
we're sending all the happy vibes to you. We love it.
I will, oh, sorry.
No, just singing your praises over here.
Yes.
Okay, huzzah! I will take those. One last thing I'll show here too, and this is something that it's just kind of a great project that I've been getting data from Kylie for the early votes, and this is one last thing I wanted to show, and this is just the early vote totals for 2024. We have 13,153 as of, I guess, yesterday, but we're also seeing this is a comparative of 2024 to 2020 and 2016 at a day basis, and so we are
Okay.
doing better this year than we have done in the past. So people are staying engaged and things of that nature. So it's a good day to be an informed citizen.
That's great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna get back to my 2-year-old and 6-year-old before they burn down the house. So yeah, if you guys have any other questions, feel free to email me or get in touch. I'm more than happy to help. Hasta luego. See you later.
Thank you.
We are at 14,516 current.
My vote's for me.
So do we have the early voting numbers for 2016 and 2020? So we know, and do we have it by precinct?
No.
No, just general.
Yep.
Okay. So if you could email me that, I'll stick it in the documents.
For this election, is it being saved per, because soon enough we'll have another data. set.
That's right.
Is it being saved to parse out early voting and election day voting? for
It
precincts?
always is, like all of them are, it's separated by election day and early voting.
And
All
by
of our
precinct.
reports are. Yes, by precinct.
That would be super fantastic.
But the early voting ones are not. They're not separated by precinct.
But the report that you get on the day
On election
of
day
votes
is separated.
will be separated by, this is how many people, this is Perry one.
Yep.
This is how many people voted early. This is how many people voted on election day. This is the total amount. And then if it's a contested election, how they voted.
Fantastic. So, well, if we can get that data and we can incorporate it in for 2024, so that's even better.
I also
That'll be
want to
super.
bring in, I don't know if anyone included you, Stacy, but we did reach a snag in our creation of a subcommittee.
I do know that.
Okay.
I do know
so-
that.
Just so everyone else is on the same page. Okay, so we wanted to have a collaborative Google Doc, just so that everyone's on the same page. We wanted to have a collaborative Google Doc where a group of members of the committee could work on the collaborative Google Doc together. And Molly told us that we could have a group of people do that, as long as they didn't represent a quorum of the committee. Because if we reach a quorum, then we're meeting outside of our
Right.
meeting time. And so I was feeling very productive and I'm like, well, all right, let's designate a subcommittee to do that. And that was the wrong thing to do. It's then the rules apply to the subcommittee. And apparently
We have
we
to
were
have
just,
open meetings in a public
Gotcha.
place, 2 days notice, make it, and everything linked on Teams so anybody can join, which is
yes. So it's the same
difficult
rules.
to manage,
Which
which is
is-
just want to have a working group.
Like abolish the.
I think, yes, can I move to abolish the committee?
We could just do it for the minutes in terms of it. Yeah, so like we have a movement to abolish the committee by Stacy.
Second.
All right, second by William. We don't have any members currently on Zoom, so I guess we can do it by voice vote in this case. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion carries.
So we're going to just make a little assignment for 3 or 4 people
And
to,
we'll
to,
back and
we'll
forth.
pass it.
Yeah, I don't know if we should have formal action on any of this.
Right, that's right, right.
Yeah, it's just, yeah.
So we're
yeah,
just gonna-
motion is-
We're just gonna get together.
Thank you for all your work on it. Yeah, okay, yeah, all right. All right,
I don't
anyway,
want the
glad we figured that out.
Getting in the way of the good.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep, man.
And just the managing of it with everybody
Wing it.
working, doing stuff. And, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And we're all working in good faith, right? No,
yes.
We're not hiding
Want it to be
anything.
done. We want it-
I want to get it done.
Yes.
Before I go to Hawaii, it's gonna be this.
That said, I did want to open up the possibility of, for like our next meeting.
Yeah. That's-
Since we are trying to work through things, of meeting for a little bit longer for our, well, you won't be here for our next meeting, right?
Will.
November 13th. So can we plan to meet for 2 hours then? Just because we're gonna lose,
I'm gonna be gone for,
for a little bit. Are people okay with that, meeting from 6 to 8? Trying,
6 to 8.
oh,
Oh,
sorry, 5 to 8, five to 7.
well, I think we
Five
can
to seven.
keep it open to being open till then, but not necessarily making it to be.
right.
I think there's stuff that we can do short term because we have some of this data now, if we were willing to just start talking about.
Yeah, that sounds good. No,
What would be
we'll do
something-
that next, but I wanted to make sure we had some extra time for our next meeting.
So 13th is, I'm sorry to be catching up on this. 13th is the last day for a while that you have available.
Yeah, well, I'll just miss the next meeting, and we probably won't even have the next meeting, right? Because
We won't have the next meeting, so we're just gonna have a long meeting, because the next meeting is Thanksgiving, the day before Thanksgiving.
Right.
And so the way that our next couple of meetings are, on the 12th, we're meeting with the NAACP at the listening session.
Right.
On the 13th, we're gonna meet from 5 to now 7 to try and work a little bit more on our draft. And then we won't meet again until, let me get this, because I wrote this down. We would meet again on the 11th. The date after we're supposed to meet is the 25th. So obviously, we're not gonna meet then. So maybe do you want to plan to have another 2-hour meeting? Are people okay with having some longer? I'd like to be really upfront with how long a meeting is going to
Can
take.
we start at 4? Is that too early for anybody? Okay, that's fine.
Well, and I think it depends on how much we can get done and how much we can agree to. So
Yeah,
I
that
think if
sounds
we
good.
can get a good thing, I mean, I think it'd be interesting if people would take a look at some of this data. So we've got it on the interactive map. If it's easier for you to do it that way, do it that way. Otherwise, look at it on these tables. So I sent a document out with, it's got it as tables and the raw data that I compiled in lots of other ways. So there's lots of different ways you can look at the data. And just start thinking about if there are any polling places you think that could be eliminated and why you would do that. I would strongly suggest that we always have at least one polling place in or very, very close to the edge of a township, right? That we don't not have any in a specific township because it's, we have political townships and some of them are bigger than 36 square miles. Like Benton in particular is particularly large. It's almost 50 square miles. So, it's a ways to go. So that's just my suggestion. But I think if we could come up with, right, if we're going to go to 22 or some arbitrary, some number that we've sort of thought about, start thinking about what those could be.
I'd caution us, at our next meeting, we'll hear from, I hope we will hear
Right.
from Bob White.
Right.
And he's got other things that we might want to understand from his perspective, like
Right.
where is there reliable internet, which is kind of
Mhm.
important.
Yes.
Right. Right.
So
Oh, that's a very.
And with the other thing to look at, which also I looked at when I looked at these potential locations, is potential additional sites for early voting.
That's true. Right.
Some of these have really great turnout and might be good locations for early voting as
Right.
well. I'm kind of assuming that might be something also we can look at, is like very successful precinct locations.
Right, especially big ones that are close to businesses and shopping and other places. That would be very useful.
Yeah, I mean, what the two that I found that looked promising, just to say, is St. John's in Ellisville, and Southside Christian. As two locations that seem to have good voter turnout and are in different areas of the county. To be on them for early, yeah,
Campus too.
and on campus too. I don't have any, obviously, because of our precinct voting location, the data is not very positive.
Yeah, because of the dates probably too, right? You think?
Well, yeah, because
If part of what we were learning was about May.
yeah, because the precinct, so only a couple of precincts, not all of the campuses, not all students vote at the student center. They disperse to lots of different locations. So the voting location on campus is not an on-campus voting location. It's, it has to be very specific people on campus and like, which you guys all know. So that's why I wasn't really considering that to be based on the data. We got a really good location, but we have other data that tells us otherwise. Okay. Anyway, I was just throwing those out as locations that had strong.
Right.
Anyway, okay. Do we want to talk? Does anyone have any feedback for the document? Did we want to do that next?
Sure. I have a couple questions for Kylie for going forward. So I think we need to understand more about the technology for polling place. I sent you a list of questions. Did you get, is that data you can get for us?
That would be Bob.
Okay. Do we have could you send me his email or do I have it?
I think you guys might have it, but I can resend it to you for.
That would be super, because I'm really interested in the number of workers, the number of pieces of technology that each one has, because then we can start extrapolating. If we need 8 printers for 4,000, how many would we need at 2, right?
Yeah.
We just need to be able to extrapolate that kind of stuff, and having those numbers would be helpful. And I'm sure somebody has a list. I know someone has a list.
Bob White creates the list of how much equipment goes to each location
Great.
because
Bob
Bob and his team is the one that designates all the equipment to each training voting location.
Great. And would he have workers? Do we know how many workers at each precinct?
I think he sent one to each location. So each recipient has somebody.
Clerks and,
Oh, our clerks,
yeah,
we're the ones that do that.
okay.
And it depends on the size of the location and how
Right.
much turnout there is.
Do you have a list like for each, for our 20?
I have it for 2024 for the general election.
Okay, I'll take that.
Okay. That'll be what it will look like for a larger election.
Right. And that's all we're doing is president, right? We're just thinking.
Doing midterms.
No,
Oh,
well, we don't have midterm data. We have presidential data.
right. Yeah. Got it.
So that's what we're doing. And those are the biggest. So we might as well just go with the max and then figure out from there. So
Yeah, I'll send that over to
so that would be super.
Yeah.
Because then that just helps. That's all that stuff that has to be addressed in that plan. So we might as well start getting some of it and looking at what that means. So that's really were my questions.
Yeah, and I had like an idea that I was talking to Ralph about it before we had this meeting, but I wanted to throw it out there as a potential recommendation for early voting, which was to take, so let's say we do go from 29 locations to 23 locations. So we imagine that is essentially, we're eliminating 72 hours of voting time. So what if we had a recommendation of adding 72 hours into early voting across possibly 2 different locations, something like Ellisville and a student location. That was one idea that I had, which would be affected by these same things. I didn't know how people would feel about it, but I was trying to think of what a recommendation on early voting might look like. And so my initial thought was 72 hours interdispersed across 2 different locations.
Also, if you guys want to look to see where a good location would be for early voting in general, because we'll lose Napa this year.
Yeah.
Oh,
Is that 100% sure?
Yeah, we've already been told all of our stuff is being moved to the Showers building after the election.
Oh my God.
Are they gonna be unsecured machines like they had in 2016 when they last did that? Do you know?
We don't know yet. They've not given us any other information besides that everything will be moved over here upstairs.
You know, the last time they did that for future, anybody was just able to walk in where they were.
That seems like a problem.
That's
Yes.
incorrect. Anyway, but any other ideas on like the 72 hour? Because I was trying, so what I have with me too is I made a version of motion of the 4 different ideas that we have. And I was trying to figure out how they would relate to our early voting locations.
I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
I think I think early voting should be a separate proposal.
I
from
think it
those.
should be separate.
I do, because I think the election board will think of it that way from my
Mhm.
very limited experience.
I
with
think
them.
so. I'm
It's
talking to you.
well, we figured out after some checking and back and forth that it's in our original scope of work.
Right.
And I agree with it being related in that way in terms of the additional access that would
need to be
Right.
put in.
But I think regardless, people were very interested in having additional early voting,
That's
whether or not we increased or decreased or went to voting centers. They really wanted more early voting regardless. So I think regardless of we might want to have more early voting centers if we have fewer precincts, but
And specifically, they wanted more offsite. We all agree they
Right.
wanted more offsite,
Yeah.
right? Like they didn't want more hours in the building.
No, I mean, I've been getting phone calls this whole last week, of people asking where the location for early voting is in Ellisville. And to have to tell them that it doesn't exist and then to get yelled at because there's not a location in Ellisville. It's
How can you
great.
tell them we have one that's centrally located, which it is?
Yeah. And
That's
so.
good to know that Ellisville specifically is being very vocal about watching.
Why don't feel calls about that, but then we've also had calls from students asking where the early voting location is for them as well. And just having to remind them.
Yeah, which is data points.
Downtown.
Yeah, all helpful data points in terms of.
Yeah, it's great.
Right.
Like, sorry, guys.
For you.
So I think that would be, a reason of just to have, if we had 3 early voting sites, one on campus, one at our regular place, is that vote center?
That one's election ops.
Election ops.
Yep.
And then one in Ellettsville somewhere would be lovely. That would be
Maybe a
fantastic.
fourth, as you suggested. A fourth? Oh, sorry. So we were talking about. Oh, yeah, Southside Christian Church.
Right.
Yeah, so Southside Christian Church, St. John's and Ellettsville was the one, it seemed like it just had better turnout than Ellettsville. There's a post office, I can't remember. I forget, St.
So
John's.
we have to worry about security with those too, right? So we have to have lockable
Right.
rooms, and I think churches some could be problematic.
Yeah.
I know St. John's is.
St. John's, isn't that was that location one of the times or the other
Yeah,
times?
that's the location both times.
Okay,
St. John's and Ellisville Christian Church. St. John's is, how has the reception been lately? Because they've been very antagonistic about
Yeah,
polling place.
they're back and forth. Like sometimes they're like, yes, we want to be a polling place. Other
Right.
times they're like, we're not really for sure. This might be our last election.
Right, that's,
So it's very, you just gotta walk on a thin line. with
I just don't know if they'd be open to having,
it.
Right, that's what I'm
Right.
saying. So having private institutions do that, I think we'd be better off with the library if we could get the Ellettsville Public Library to do
And
it.
with early voting, it's gonna have to be, it will have to be in a room that can be locked
Right.
at the end of the day because none of that equipment can be taken down until the end of the
Right.
early voting.
well, I think we can suggest St. John's and then if you guys have additional issues.
There's nowhere for us to lock it.
No, I mean, but, that it has to be locked to manage during early voting, or are we saying that during?
Yeah, so like when they would be closed,
Okay,
when early voting hours are closed, it would have, all the equipment would have to be locked away from the public. So with it being in there on a
We transport
Sunday,
it the day of, and then, like, could we have like days of early voting, or?
that cost would be astronomical, transporting back and forth.
also the taking it down and rebuilding it takes weeks.
Yeah.
Like they're actually right down the hall right now, building everything for election day.
Well, do we have a location on campus where we can lock it?
Depends. If we have the room that we're using this year for the general election at IMU, yes.
Okay. So we just need to, so we don't think that churches might not have this.
No.
Yeah, I think.
Especially with them having public in there on a Sunday and we're not open for early voting on Sundays at all.
Okay,
It would not be beneficial at a church.
okay, got it.
I do think though, going back to the 72-hour idea, I think that can just be part of the support for a need for more early voting sites. Like if it's some, because it sounds like we all, like there's a strong want for more early voting sites regardless, that. We'll talk about it more, but if that is the recommendation that we make, then saying in that also that like, not only is it something everyone wants, it also would help alleviate this. I think that is still a good parallel to draw in the document.
Yeah, because I think I looked at it, it looks like we have like 208 hours of early voting already, and I think the goal would be to add 72 hours of offsite locations of some type. Yeah, like we said, like if we could get 4 locations, if we can get 2 locations, I think that would be, I think we wouldn't want to have just one location, because once again, I don't think we want to. Well, one, we don't have to choose, but also like it feels as if we're encouraging one group of voters since they have their own special.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of it. Yeah, and I know we're nearly out of time, but I did write out like a version of what might go into the thing of like what might be our 4 options.
Why don't you just email it to me? and I'll
Yeah.
get it?
Yeah, you can put it in the doc if you want to, but, I don't know. I would like,
Yeah,
we
I
can
mean,
vote on that
this is
today,
what we
but-
did, right? So this is actually in the desk we currently have.
Oh, yeah, we have it, yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah. I think I was trying to put some additional language on it,
Okay,
like this analysis.
Oh, this is the minutes, that's why.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know if this is helpful.
here, thanks.
Cause, yeah, so this is those same options, which I think, yeah, you have.
We haven't, I mean, I was trying to get to the, where we are right now. This is where we are right now. So we've got that. And then we'll start working on these.
Yeah, I didn't know if we had any additional language or. Wasn't sure how we wanted to proceed on in terms of this. One of the things we talked about is voting on what our preferred solution would be.
Perfect.
You wanna do that next meeting or today?
I'm ready to vote now if we'd like to, but I mean, if people would like to.
Well, let's put some let me put some text in the document and get it a little more fleshed out so we can put all the numbers together and,
Okay. All right, so we'll plan on voting
In our next session, it's gonna be a little long.
in our next session. That will be a little bit longer.
And then we can talk about it a little bit too.
Yeah, and if you wanna, like, yeah, if there's any language to this, like, one of the things I added, like, the analysis for the 23 would be based on geographic distance, population, and suitability of the site. Those were the things that I put, there might be additional wordsmithing people might have for that. Sites will be included in the vote center plan was some of the language that I was trying to think about is because there's, on one hand, there's the convert all current locations, and then we should not adopt voting centers. And then based on our analysis, we should select 11 vote center locations. And that should be based on township representation because we wanted one for every township.
Right.
Then also geographic distance, population and suitability of the site. As potential, like language in terms of it. I want it to be as, to people kind of, anyway, okay, you can think about it, give me back if you do about how that's written, or if there's other things that should be, because I would entertain people also saying like, if there's demographic representation that we also wanted to include, but I don't think we're including that currently in our
We don't,
analysis.
well, first, we don't necessarily have demographic information.
Right, well,
We have some of it,
A little bit,
but
but
it's in different
it's
places.
in different places. And, we're looking, I mean, we do have in the document I sent out belatedly today, does have, here's the size of the townships. Here's the population, 2020 census of the population. Here's how many people voted. Here's how many voting polling places there are. So that we can say, on average, right, we say there's a polling place per N people. And the range is this to this. And I don't remember what those numbers are. My phone's too little.
Oh,
For me, that my old lady eyes don't focus on that. Oh, there we go. I've learned all about townships. So if you ever want to know anything about townships, let me know. I'm your girl.
Is there anything particular that you wanted to call out?
Really, when I was really just trying to think of this, people starting to think about there were places you wanted to cut, right? What would those, what would those be? Is where I'm really starting to think about things. And if we go to 11, what does that looks like a disaster. If we go to 11.
Yeah, no.
But just getting all that data together, right? So just knowing how many people vote in this. If we're gonna have one in Bloomington Township, we should know exactly how many people are voting and how many machines we would need, which would then say how much space we would need and what kind of site we would need and those kinds of things. So it just, right,
I will
so all
say-
the,
I will say Burgoon's gonna be a trick because that's the only real location out there.
right,
And Bob has said that he's questionable if we can fit any more equipment in there.
got it.
So
Well, I don't know that we need more in Burgoon because
I,
it's only,
Well, we don't have any
Oh.
devices over there as it is,
got it.
so.
yeah, I mean, I think there's a possibility that we may recommend the elimination of the Burgoon, which would mean that we wouldn't have one in that township.
Right, that's Polk Township.
I'll tell you that that's a long, I mean, it's a 20-minute drive
Yeah.
Right,
to the east side. I mean, so you're talking quite a bit
Yeah.
of drive for those people.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if we can't get the technology into the building.
It would have to be finding another location.
Isn't the only location that's available, this is the question.
I believe so. Polk is very limited to,
Yeah.
it's very teeny.
Because it's
Right.
Burgoon Church.
right.
The other thing I was thinking about is like, for example, Tri North. Tri North is very close to like the Crestmont neighborhood. And so if we eliminated the Crestmont neighborhood, the one nearest to the Crestmont neighborhood, we'd have to think about where another location would be, just because if we're thinking about going back to the demographics question of like
Geographic or demographic?
the demographic.
The social vulnerability.
Social vulnerability index,
Right.
right? Like, so we're thinking about areas of town where there's a larger amount of African-American folks of lower economic status.
Right.
So I didn't know if we wanted to include that as part of our analysis, which we don't, you're right, we don't really have good data for it, but I was thinking about our upcoming meeting with the NAACP.
Right.
And wanted to make sure that like we had thought through, like, for example, my, like, spoiler, I looked at those and Tri North is one of those locations that doesn't have very many traditionally compared to other locations nearby. So we'd have to have an idea of other locations that,
Doesn't have very many what?
oh, it just has lower turnout in those precincts, the precincts that historically have voted at that site.
Which also could mean that folks just didn't have access to that site in their workday, you know,
Right.
like, because
Exactly.
that's the other hard part of
Right.
that.
They live-
getting right
right.
now.
Yeah, that's the problem with, that's why I'm trying to like make that difference is
Yes.
they didn't have a choice. People didn't have a choice where they voted before. They
Yeah.
had to go to a specific location based on where they
And
live.
the location either didn't work for them, or they were not motivated voters, and it's hard for us to.
So we should be able to tell some of that though by how many people requested absentee ballots and voted early from those
Yeah.
precincts.
To some extent, yeah.
Right, I mean, so,
I will say though, there was more precincts added to that location, so the 24 numbers might look different than what was
Right.
previously, because Arlington Elementary was not a location this year because of the construction that they had going on.
Right, which is the next location on the other side of Crestmont.
Right.
And so we took their precincts and split it up between Bloomington North and Tri North.
Oh, so they might have, so you're saying there might be an increase due to a number?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there could be additional factors that could help in terms of it, but I was just kind of bringing that up if we're trying to do that sort of analysis and if we do get feedback in our listening session that we need to be aware of like historically Black neighborhoods and making sure that we're not,
Disenfranchising voters, but.
yeah,
It's
exactly,
wonderful,
yeah,
it's close,
yeah,
yes.
exactly.
we have to worry about that for Dragoon too. Those are elderly.
Yeah.
I mean, so we don't want to disenfranchise them either. What, is there a way, I was just thinking of maybe a fifth option to include with this, just the thought.
Okay.
That we recommend the super precincts include more precincts. In other words, we consolidate even more.
I think that we could look at I think that you should spend some time with the data on GA.
But I'm saying if the data
Yeah,
bears that out, do we want to consider entertain that may be another way, like student voting as an example? You know, we put more precincts in the one place, so they're all more in the same area.
But then people couldn't choose, right?
no.
No, they still have to be in those precincts.
And that would be my concern is that like, and I have no idea what the data says yet, but
Right.
I worry that with the super precincts that serve more precincts, that we actually have lower turnout from the precincts that all have to go to the one site. But I don't know if that's true. So like, I'd be curious to see what the data is, but my instinct would be that that is how it goes. So until we know, I mean, which is why I think next.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Is it something based on the data,
Yeah,
we'd be open-minded to
yeah. So I think next,
as a
You
consideration?
think if you want to, if in the zero, and if in the no change or the no vote center, you say, we want to
Gotcha.
add that
Right.
to make more super precincts so that
Thank
it's.
you, exactly. So that we
We
can
can
add that
certainly
number
add
four.
that. And if you want to think about, because for me, I get a little lost in the, what you think would be decent precinct
Yeah, I mean, you should, I would entertain like
Yeah.
language if
Right.
you wanted to bring it forward, but I think one of the things that we were trying to do is everyone would pick their preferred.
Right, so if you have an idea for that, what the super precincts would look like, why don't you send me that and I can put it in
Okay.
a document?
And I'll tell you guys, my biggest concern with vote centers is there's no guardrails to prevent what I call packing them in one area.
And cut. I am going to add my own, which is not putting words in your mouth.
No.
My one concern is the cutting of vote centers later.
Yes.
Despite what we recommend now.
Because it would might result in exactly that.
Right.
It's just like all of it's all.
But they can do that with precinct, I mean, they can do that with anything, right?
They
So,
can't do that in precincts. Precincts legally have to have every, I think, 5,000 people
okay,
represented. So I mean, that there's strict guidelines
got it.
for that.
That's very fair.
Yeah,
But the polling places, wouldn't you could still just have 3 polling places in the county?
no,
You can't. you
Like
don't.
these small, these, as you called it, super precincts, would that happen to a greater degree?
It could, it would depend on how many registered voters are in each of the precincts that you combine together.
Okay.
So you would have to continue, like, you would have to keep track each year of how many people are registered in those individual precincts within that super precinct.
because I'll tell you.
Thing that we're constantly having, that's why we have to move people around all the
Right.
time.
Hey, one of the things, and probably just should get this out of here now since we're down the process, that we had a former clerk, Nicole was clerk, at a work session, was upset about something. And she said, you wait till state laws change, which is a majority vote for vote centers. We will cram every MF1 on campus and you guys will not get another vote again.
Oh, God.
So, I mean, and then I started looking into it. There's nothing to stop that.
I think that's, I mean, yeah, so yes, the way it was written is meant to incentivize people by taking out a lot of those guardrails, and they haven't added those back in, but I would add
And no
that.
state has. That's just it.
And no state has, but I would also say that we're now in what, like 12 years of voting centers, and mostly that hasn't happened.
Well-
There are locations where they have
Every time
eliminated
the vote
voting.
center has been done in every county, Vigo, Vandenberg, I think St. Joseph, the population center ends up flipping the entire county. And the same goes with red ones. If there's a blue population, if there's not wherever there's a big concentration of votes, they usually flip the county.
So what you're saying is there's higher, so not a bigger. I have to see the data you were looking
Yeah,
at.
turnout's not impacted, but all you gotta do is look at the actual results of the elections. There's no true demographic change, but it just seems like what happens is those precincts that are on the fringes or is the minority party. It happened in Georgia, it's happened in Texas for the opposite way from red to blue. It's a way to consolidate power for the majority party in a county. I'm concerned with that, especially without guardrails.
I think that looking at some, like next week at least, pulling some data on that, on specifically what the turnout for the super precincts are, it should be part of the conversation. Okay. Because I think that at least for myself, next week, I'm probably going to pull some very specific data based on all of these and just have that ready to discuss before we decide to vote on these. On separate note, I am unfortunately not available for the meeting at the NAACP. So I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I should be able to make that meeting.
Yeah, it's just a listening session.
It is, yeah.
I've, it's not the meeting.
I also,
That's on the 12th.
like, we have a work conflict that night. I would really like to be there. I'm not sure.
I would
yet,
also-
So I'll.
Okay.
I'm with you too, but.
When is it?
It's on the 11th.
Oh, wait,
Wasn't
yeah, the 12th.
Which way is the Wednesday?
No,
Tuesday.
Oh, the Tuesday, yes.
And what
I am.
location is it?
It's at Banneker Center.
Yeah, I forget what time.
Right? So lovely. I would love it.
Okay, thanks everyone for sticking around for a little bit. We'll do a 2-hour meeting in terms of it. Let's just really quickly, because do you wanna, all right, tell me your name.
Zoe.
I'm sorry.
Zoe, let's just go around and say all of our names.
I'm so sorry.
We're so sorry. We get real excited.
Well, I had a guess too. I didn't wanna-
Yeah, so if everyone just wants to go around and say like, all right, so I'm Alana Stonebreaker, I'm one of the Democrat representatives, I guess, on this committee, and I'm the chair of the committee.
William Ellis, I'm the Republican chairman in Monroe County, and I'm also the Republican rep on the committee.
I am Ami. Sorry, we didn't back up and do this earlier. I'm Ami Gandhi. And I was the, one of the later ones to join the committee in the initial round of appointments and here in a nonpartisan capacity, I'm a voting rights attorney.
I'm Kylie Ferris, the Monroe County Election Supervisor. I'm here mainly for county support.
I'm Danielle Wheelock, I represent independent voters here in Monroe County.
I'm Stacy Kowalczyk, and I too represent independent voters in the council.
I'm Ralph Shaw. I'm here representing the League of Women Voters.
Well, it's great to have you. We'll see you next time. This is what we're gonna do a vote on what we prefer, these sorts of things. It's okay if you want to abstain at that vote, but if you need any additional information to get caught up, we can meet and discuss if you want.
I have one question about the teams. Is there any way I could be added to that or?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that'll be an
I
IP
think there's
thing.
any more the information in there that might be helpful.
Yeah, there's some good stuff, information in there.
Yeah, so we'll review it, and so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, we are adjourned.
Sorry.